Welcome, guys, to the Trading Titans podcast, another edition. So, Merry Christmas, everybody. It is Christmas already, and this is the last podcast I'm going to be doing this side of the year, and then I will be returning next year with some new stuff. So, I guess it is prudent for me to go on to the quote, and so we can get on with it. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it, and it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now. Now, this quote is important because I guess when we come to trading, everyone comes with a perception. And one of the reasons why I started the podcast with a lot of live trades and a lot of, hey, look what I'm doing. It's not because this is what I wanted to do, but I wanted to make sure that I got that bit out of the way. That actually, over a consistent framework, it is possible to do well if you have the right tools. And I wanted people to be aware that, look, I didn't start Market Profile. We all learned it like everybody else. So it's not my idea. It's not my system. It's nothing to do with me. However, I'm honest with myself. I know what works, and I've taken the time to assess this, and I've brought this to the forefront. So my focus is achieving with Market Profile. And I think that should be your focus. Your focus shouldn't really be about even what I say. It should be more about achieving with the right tools, right? So again, when we're struggling, and that's one of the things that resonates about this quote from Marcus Aurelius, is that when we're struggling or something is really getting under our skin or pissing us off, right, and it's external, it's not coming from within, then maybe we just change our whole thinking around the whole thing, right? Maybe the pain stops, right? So I think as a trader, you got to be prepared to change your thinking from time to time. You got to be prepared to kind of step up when it's necessary and say to yourself that, hey, I might have made a mistake. I made a mistake, sitting in a group session with like 100 people trying to do a course on trading. I mean, it doesn't really make any sense. At the end of the day, I think a learning process in trading has to be a continuous one. So it's almost like someone has to kind of continuously support you with ideas that you can refer back to and focus on. If I sat in a room with 100 people and then expected to learn trading tomorrow, then I exactly deserve what's coming to me, right? Because it's just really doesn't work. So from my perspective, right, it is really important that we focus on the things that matter, right? And if we have any preconceived conceptions, that we throw them out, right? Because at the end of the day, it can only harm us. And that's the bottom line. I've learned what I've learned, and I'm doing what I'm doing. I've achieved what I've achieved. And I'm relatively happy with the path that I've chosen, right? And I'm only this way because I found something that works for me, and I know it works, and I'm confident in its ability, and that built confidence in me, right? So it was all through changing my thinking, right? Because initially, when you start in this business, it doesn't matter where you start from, you're going to pick up what's in front of you, the broker's tools, and if you're lucky enough, like I was lucky enough to find someone who was immediately going to say, look, I will kind of give you somewhat of put you under my wing. You become my apprentice, whatever. And I'm going to teach you how this stuff works, right? From a real perspective. There wasn't much assessment to do because everything else out there was, sitting in a room with 100 people, right? And, watching a guy sitting on a Lamborghini, right? We all know who I'm talking about, right? So the bottom line is that none of this stuff resonates with me. And at the end of the day, I wanted to become a professional. I wanted to do this for a living. I wanted to get out there. And so I did exactly what I intended to do. And it made practical sense that I got continuous support, that I had someone who had my back and was not going to abandon me and wasn't just going to chuck me a room with a million other people and sell me a dream, right? So that was important to me. But in any case, everyone has their own decisions to make. And I think the importance of the quote was to kind of highlight that, you know what, If it's not working, change it. Right. Going forward, we're going to jump into the podcast and look at some of the trades this week, and that's pretty much it. I'm not going to talk too much about live trades anymore. I will still do a couple here and there, and for explanation and reference purposes, but I'm not going to go into live trades so much anymore. I'm going to focus on trying to give you guys content so you can start to get a feel and understanding for certain ways to deal with market profile and certain ways you can actually go about trading it. If you got any questions, guys, just fire them out on email. Check us out, tradersclub.london, if you wanted to sort of get into some of the free videos we've done over the past, say, 3 years, because we've been back. Everything we do is recorded. Everything we've ever said is on tape. So unlike some people, maybe they say stuff one-on-one in a room and there's no record of it. Every call we've made, every trade we've looked at, good or bad, is on record. So just check us out. Check out the library. Some of it is free, some are premium members, but you get a lot of the content we talk about, and of course you got access to the podcast. So again, lots and lots and lots of content. So check us out there. And again, if you wanted to sort of have a look at market profile or some of the other tools that we have around it, including Orion Hunter, which is a signal service based on market profile, then just go to Revolt and have a look in there. And have a gander, basically, and make yourself comfortable. Any questions, guys, let me know, and let's crack on with it. Okay, guys, so we're just taking a look at dollar yen this morning, so Monday morning, and next trade is in. I'm looking for a gap in value equally. Now, I'm just going to explain very briefly why I prefer the gap trades. So let's just zoom in or here on the profile. Right now, the idea of gaps is the simple fact that it's a market inefficiency. So if you've got a market inefficiency, you kind of have to take advantage of it. What does the market inefficiency mean? It just means that the liquidity provider has run into difficulty with liquidities, which means that he's going to have to run back on himself. Now, the only way you can actually see that is if you got a profile. There is no other way, because the profile looks at statistical value and it tells you the sort of difference between value and price in terms of was price stable enough in this area or wasn't it? And if it wasn't stable in that area, it means that it's probably going to get revisited, right? So, I mean, there are a lot of ideas around this, okay? But from my perspective, it's quite simple. If I can see that gap in value, then I want to trade against it. Right, it's really that simple. So it is an inefficiency, and there's nothing the market can do about it. So it's one of the things that I expect in the near future isn't really going to change. And as long as that isn't going to change, then we have an opportunity. So we have to take advantage of those kind of arbitrage opportunities. So anyway, I've got a short on dollar yen. We'll keep monitoring it to close. I am looking at other gaps in value as well. But just to add as well, before we go into the next section, this is probably going to be one of the last live trades that I'm going to do for the podcast. I think it was important to me that I got the live trades out of the way, because obviously if someone's coming in and seen a podcast, it's nice to see some live trades done, so you get the idea of what we're getting on about when we talk about market profile, when we talk about all the other things. And there's so much to learn on market profile. I mean, the handbook from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange is like 375 pages. Right, so it is a big subject, and there's a lot going on there. There's a lot more to learn. So this is just the beginning. This is just one thing I wanted to show people in terms of what happens when you use the profile. I think going forward, the more you delve into market profile, the more interested you get, the more you're going to see from it. And that's the whole point. It's about creativity. It's about taking trading to a new level. And to be honest, most of the older methods, they're going extinct. There's nothing you can do. Markets change too often, and you need something that's dynamic, that will change with the market, not basically wait for the market to change, then it changes. And it doesn't really work. In most cases, most of the old systems are very static. They're not keeping up with algorithms. They're not keeping up with those areas of the market that are consistently changing. And it's just the way it is. So in the next slide of this podcast, we will see how this trade fares on. But so far so good. We'll also look at dollar CAD and AUD/USD, also showing a certain degree of inefficiency, and we'll see how they turn out for the week. Remember, guys, this is a weekly profile, and if you want to know more about market profile, there's not a great deal of content out there, despite this being the idea that hedge funds, all the large institutions, all the major bank analysts, everybody's looking at the profile, all the big futures traders. So you have to ask yourself, why is the market not talking to you about it? Why is your broker not telling you? Why is your trading mentor not telling you? Why are people not telling you about it? Well, I can tell you exactly why. Is that most of them are on the sell side of the business. They don't want you to know. Right? You knowing is not good for them. It doesn't really matter how you spin it or how they spin themselves. If they're not telling you about it, it's because they don't want you to know. Most of them will know about it. You couldn't have done 10 years in this business and not know about market profile, right? It's hilarious even. You know, all you have to do is go to the floor of a major exchange and you would find someone who knows about market profile. Most of the guys who retired off the floor and came into, electronic trading would know about market profile. So, back in the day, they used to combine that with the liquidity data bank, which it doesn't exist anymore. But there's a lot of things that went on with market profile, and everyone knows about it who needs to know about it. So I'm making it my mission to kind of bring it to you guys and, make you realize that actually there is another way, and this is the way. But, we can't convince everybody. So, take a pick and see what you see. At the end of the day, I want to expand on the topic a little bit more with the podcast, but I wanted to get the live trades out of the way. Because now we've had about 11 episodes on the podcast, and through those 11 episodes, it's all live trades, right? So you want a live trade, you got about 11 live trades to mush through. It's almost quite a couple of grand worth in value from those live trades that you've seen. So in the end, look, money's been made. It doesn't really matter at this stage. For me, I've got absolutely nothing to prove. For me, it's wake up in the morning and get on with the business. So for those of you guys who are trying to learn, who still feel like, there's a place you need to get to with this, then I'm glad to be a helping hand. And, take it as you will. I'm a straight shooter. I call it as it is. Right, so anyway, on the next slide, we'll look at how this trade fares on. Any questions, guys, just let me know along the way. And again, if you want to find out a little bit more about what we do, we now have the transformation program uploaded on the site. You can visit us at www.tradersclub.london. If you want to see some of our premium content that we've got, you've got access to the podcast here. Take your pick. I mean, you can join us at the client room as well. It's not incredibly expensive, and you got us for a year. We're here to support you, so you can take a pick on that. We also show some of these market profile trades on Orion, so we have it's kind of a signal thing that we kind of tell you what to trade. For those guys who cannot be bothered to learn, that is okay. We got something to suit everybody. In any case, hopefully we catch up on this trade. And any questions, guys, just let me know. Have fun. Okay, guys, we are a few days in from the last time we spoke about dollar yen, right? So if you've been following the position, this is dollar yen. So this is what we were expecting, was a slight trade in the gap. We weren't looking for too much on that trade. For where we were trading it from, it was quite reasonable. So anyway, this is the end result basically. So this is dollar yen, dollar CAD, AUD, USD. So they're all fine, and these are all gap trades, right? It's really important, of course, to note that the key to this idea is basically being able to understand volatility. And one of the things that I do really, really well, and I have done really, really well over my time trading, is I've developed a very good understanding of volatility. After a while, it didn't really matter to me how some of the other stuff turned out. It was mainly, do I understand volatility? And once I got that, I kind of got it all. So I think as you develop through your trading, you are going to spend a lot more time trying to understand volatility and how it interacts with statistical value. And that's, of course, the importance of having the profile. Right? It gives you a quicker view, a quicker glance of what you're trying to achieve, and you're able to execute on it without much thinking. Right? So the gap trade is just one of maybe 5 or 6 really good ideas that you can employ in trading. There's the argument, of course, if the gap trades work, why do anything else? And of course, there are people who are going to be quite comfortable being rigid. As you can see, for the past couple of weeks, I've only done gap trades. There is nothing else that I've needed to do. And what you find is that gap trades kind of give you that extra that you need, and you know you need it, so you got to keep doing these trades in order to keep making money. But then you would find that my sizes with gap trades are larger because I know that there's a 90% probability they're going to work. I do a bigger size, and this could be considered over leveraging. It doesn't matter for me. There's no right way to trade. In other words, if you make money, I mean, who's going to tell you it's a right or wrong way to trade? I think reminiscence of the stock operator is a very good example with Jesse Livermore's story. So in the end, trading is the ability to make money from the markets, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And if you can do that, then you are effectively a trader. No one should tell you, in other words, how you can do it. And of course, if it's a problem and you're trying to find your feet, you're trying to find a way to do this, and you want to kind of walk away from all the noise, then naturally speak to someone like me. I've been doing it for a while and I know how it works. So I will tell you what I do and what works for me, and then you can decide whether it's going to work for you equally. But there has to be a sense of open-mindedness and a willingness to learn and admit. You got to brush aside the ego and admit that, well, I don't really know, and any knowledge is better than none, right? So the bottom line is that it's also about having that self-acceptance to admit that you're not perfect at everything. I think a lot of us, when we come to this business, we come with a certain degree of perfection from whatever else it is we've done, and then this business kind of humbles you a little bit, and no one likes the feeling of that. So they're more prone to want to call it a fad or something else, or be very critical. And for me, that's perfectly normal. It's a perfectly human reaction to the fact that your ego just got bruised by a couple of ticking bars and prices, generally played by what anyone can describe of adolescents who've come out of university in banks. And it can feel at times like this thing is just way too bloody humbling for my liking, and I understand entirely, right? And there's nothing worse than having to listen to someone who's actually doing it and telling you that, yeah, you do it this way XX and you can't do it that way XX, and it's not working out too well. It's even more frustrating, and I get it entirely. These are all normal human reactions, but you got to drop the ego. One of the keys to succeeding as a trader is dropping the ego, and if you can't drop the ego, it's going to be very difficult for you, because you are going to have bad runs, and those are going to have an effect on your psychology much more, and as a result, your bad streak would most likely continue just because you're psychologically debilitated. So just a few things to bear in mind. But anyway, call a spade a spade. So far so good. So another good week. I am looking forward to kind of restructuring the podcast a little bit. Now, I've done several trades. I think we've got about 12 episodes now of Trading Titans, and on each episode there is a trade there. There are a couple of trades, right? So, over those, you can do the maths, right? Just scroll through all the videos if you wish, right? So the bottom line is that we have nothing to prove. And that was the point when I started this podcast, is I wanted to be able to say to people in the beginning that, look, I have nothing to prove, right? What I'm doing here is because I love doing it and I enjoy doing it. I got nothing to prove. So take what you will from it, enjoy it, don't enjoy it, learn from it, don't learn from it. The reality of the situation is that it's entirely up to you. The ball is in your court. You decide what you do with it in the end. One thing I learned in life is that you can't make people do things. It's impossible. And as a practitioner of stoicism, most importantly, I really, really, really believe that you can't change the way people think, or you can't force them to change the way they think. They can pretend they've changed, but the truth of the matter is that they're not going to change. So it's still down to the individual. So everyone who's watching this and has enjoyed it, awesome stuff, and I'm glad that you're taking something from it. Those of you who are still on the fence and thinking about, is this real? Is this the way to go? Then just search yourself, really. Just ask yourself the question, you're seeing it all. I've been keen not to hold back. I've been keen to open up a little bit more, and within, of course, the guidelines of regulations, etc., etc. So I've kind of done it for the benefit of everybody else. So I'm going to restructure the podcast a little bit anyway. So now I'm going to focus a lot on trying to sort of start building a slightly cohesive structure. Now, I do want you guys to take on, some of the courses, and I do want you to work with us closely, because at the end of the day, we're running a business, right? So I'm not going to sit here and pretend, right? So the reality of the scenario is that if you like what you see, then naturally check out. Of course, you want to get hold of the profile. You feel you've learned enough and you want to give it a go. We do have the TPO chart there, so just go to the vaults and you can purchase it on there. Or you can decide to look into our client room, or you can decide to look in the transformation program, which is newly uploaded. We're also starting an audio podcast, which is not really going to be done in the same structure as I do the video podcast, which is mainly educational. The audio podcast is designed to kind of give you guys an understanding of financial markets overall. So if you're thinking about coming into it, or you're thinking about more or less, or rather there have been things plaguing you, I would say, as you've done it, things you haven't been sure about, the audio podcast should clear that up, because I'm going to be covering topics that you probably never heard about before. Hopefully I don't get sued down the line. I escaped initial start of this business. I escaped a lawsuit, and I hope I can keep talking and escaping these things, because it's good for the public to know. So the bottom line is that if you listen to the audio podcast, you should get a feel for how everything works overall in the financial engine, and we can touch on some topics that I wouldn't have time to touch on in the educational stuff. And if you've got any questions, do let me know. But beyond that, I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and see you next time around.